Okay, let's contemplate our motivation. And thinking of the people in Pakistan now whose homes have been devastated by floods, whose livelihood has been washed away by water. Who are not getting the aid they need. And see that so easily we could be in that very same position. Slightly different karma ripening, and we would be there with no possibility to learn the Dharma. And who knows what kind of karma we've created in the past that could throw us into really unfortunate rebirths where we're separated from the spiritual path and the ability to practice it. So right now, while we have the opportunity, then we need to really use it wisely and do as much purification and as much creation of merit as we can, and to put many, many seeds of the Dharma in our mind, and to develop understanding of the Dharma as best as we can, really integrating the teachings with our life. And so we want our life to have the most meaning possible. And that's accomplished through the bodhicitta, the aim for full enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And we can think especially of the people in Pakistan who are suffering right now in a very gross way, as well as the people in very rich, comfortable places who are also experiencing the unsatisfactory conditions of cyclic existence. And with compassion for all of them, use that as a motivation to really pay attention and take the teachings to heart so that we can practice them and experience the benefit of practice. So let's generate that motivation. Okay, so there were some questions that came up last week, and I did a little bit of research, and so I can make a report back to you. That word that we were wondering about in the fourth point, it's not exalted wisdom, which is yeshi in Tibetan, but it's knower, which is kenpa. So it must be some kind of knower or comprehension that is supported at least by renunciation. Okay, so it's found from path of accumulation all the way through. Then the question also came up last week about if somebody enters the hearer and solitary realizer path, if they can transfer to the bodhisattva path. Okay, kind of like transferring subways or something. Actually, it's not exactly like that. For somebody to transfer, of course, they have to completely change their motivation, generating the bodhicitta motivation, aiming for full enlightenment, not simply their personal liberation. But if they happen to be on the first three paths of hearer, solitary realizer, vehicle, path of accumulation, of preparation, of seeing, then they can transfer into the bodhisattva path if they generate the bodhicitta. When they do that, they start at the bodhisattva path of accumulation, because they have to generate all the merit that bodhisattvas generate, which they didn't have to generate when they were on the hearer, solitary realizer path. Some hearers and solitary realizers that are on their path of meditation, some of them can transfer into the bodhisattva path. Depends upon whether they're abandoning their afflictions serially or simultaneously, but I won't get into that whole description right now. But some of them, depending on that, can transfer. Yeah. Otherwise, they go through to the end, attain arhatship, stay in the bliss of meditative equipoise on emptiness until the Buddha wakes them up and says, "You forgot sentient beings," and at which point, they generate bodhicitta. I don't think so quickly and easily. They have to really exert some effort and then start on the bodhisattva path of accumulation, even though they've realized emptiness, even though they're already arhats. Okay. Then the question had also come up about who actually can realize emptiness. Yeah. And so in terms of inferential realization, I'm not quite sure who all can. I mean, in terms of beings of the different realms, definitely human beings can, and probably gods can. But in terms of direct perception of emptiness, in other words, entering the path of seeing, then it has to be somebody in the human realm or somebody in the desire realm of gods. Okay, so the first time they realize emptiness directly, the physical basis is a human being or one of the desire realm gods, and then the mental basis is having either one of the concentrations or a preparatory, what we call access concentration. Okay, that's the mental basis. Okay, so Manjushri, you have a very auspicious name, but you don't have the right physical basis. And you're sleeping right through it. So, this is why our human life, if we know the Dharma and have the right conditions, is very precious, because we do have the possibility to realize emptiness inferentially and directly. Okay? So I think that was the questions from last week. Did anybody have any others? If you have questions, then write them down, and then the next week I can speak about them at the beginning of the teaching. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the 4 establishments of mindfulness. There was a verse in the Precious Jewel Upon the Crown Sutra, which is, I believe, is a Mahayana sutra. And here it's talking about what mindfulness is. So it talks about different kinds of mindfulness. The mindfulness that ensures the non-arising of afflictions. Okay. The mindfulness that ensures that no opening is given to the ills. The mindfulness that ensures that one does not venture on false or bad paths. And the mindfulness that guards one's mind like a guard at the door against all non-virtuous minds and mental factors. This is called perfect mindfulness. Okay, so there's a mindfulness that's doing 4 things. It ensures the non-arising of afflictions, by being mindful of virtuous objects, and not just mindful like bare attention, but mindful together with wisdom. Okay? It ensures that there's no opening given to the ills, so any kind of defiled mental state, then it doesn't leave any kind of opening for the mind to go into that. It ensures that one does not venture on false or bad paths, so it protects against wrong views. And wrong views are quite serious, because if we have wrong views, then we practice in an incorrect way, then we don't get the realizations that we're actually seeking. And there's tons of wrong views. So we have to be quite careful of that. And then the mindfulness that guards one's mind like a guard at the door against all non-virtuous minds and mental factors. Okay, so it guards at the door so that non-virtuous mental states cannot take over the mind. Okay, and it guards again by remembering or staying focused on virtuous objects. So remember, mindfulness, the same word is the word for memory. Okay? So it's really remembering what is virtuous, remembering what we're supposed to be doing. Okay? Then I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness as a mental factor, because it's one of the, it's called an object ascertaining mental factor. So it's quite an important one. And so it's in both of the Treasury of Knowledge and the Compendium of Knowledge. Remember I talked about those 2 last week? They were written by the brothers Asanga and Vasubandhu. Okay? So mindfulness is a distinct mental factor that repeatedly brings to mind a phenomena of previous acquaintance without forgetting it. Okay, there's your definition of mindfulness. Okay, in regard to a familiar object, the mind is not forgetful and operates without distraction. So you can see how, sometimes the way we throw mindfulness around in the American press, it doesn't really fulfill that definition. Okay? So here, if we're going to talk about the 4 establishments of mindfulness, it's good to understand what it is. So this mindfulness has 3 features. First of all, it's a familiar object. Okay? So you can't have mindfulness towards something you're not familiar with. You can't be mindful of something that you've never cognized before. It has to be something that you've had some previous association with. Okay? Then a second quality is that it doesn't forget that object. Okay? So it means that the mind is not distracted from the meditation object. The mindfulness is right there. It remembers the object so that the object is very vivid in your mind. Okay, so if you're being mindful when you're practicing ethical conduct, then you're mindful of your precepts. That's your object. If you're being mindful when you're developing serenity or shamatha, then whatever your object of meditation is, whether it's the breath or the image of the Buddha or one of the 4 immeasurables, whatever it is, that's your object that you're familiar with, and you remember that object. Okay, so it holds it in mind. And then the third quality of mindfulness is that it prevents distraction to other objects. So that's very helpful, isn't it? Yeah. Why do we get distracted when we're meditating? Because our mindfulness isn't strong. So we need strong mindfulness that knows what the object is, puts the mind on it and remembers it. And because it's remembering it so strong, then the mind doesn't get distracted to other things. Okay? So that's what mindfulness is. Mm-hmm. And so your mindfulness functions to not allow the mind to be distracted from the object, and in this way it's a basis for stabilizing the mind, okay? For generating. Mindfulness plays a role in accomplishing serenity and developing single-pointed concentration. Yeah, it also plays a role in developing wisdom because it's able to keep the mind on the object so that you can investigate the object. So you can analyze it, you can develop wisdom regarding that object. Okay? When we're studying, mindfulness helps us remember what we've studied, so it doesn't go in one ear and out the other. And so in that way, it enables our knowledge of the Dharma to increase. Why is it that we read something or we hear teachings and can't remember it afterwards? Again, the mental factor of mindfulness isn't strong. Sometimes the information didn't even go in because we were distracted at the beginning. Okay? So, maybe thinking about an object of attachment, an object of anger, or something like that. Okay? But even if the information goes in, if we can't remember it later, that's due to a weakness of mindfulness. If we can, that means our mindfulness is holding steady. In our daily life, mindfulness remembers what has to be done and what needs to be done. Okay, so all of us list makers make lists because we can't always remember what we need to do. Okay. When we're developing concentration, then mindfulness knows what the meditation object is and keeps the mind on it. It holds it there so it can't get distracted. Okay? So, we can see that in many areas of our life, mindfulness is very helpful. Whether we're keeping ethical conduct, whether we're generating concentration, whether we're, trying to meditate with wisdom. So it plays a role in those three higher trainings, the higher trainings of ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. Okay, so it's a very, very important mental factor. Yeah, if you look at the 37, I think I talked about this last time, if you look at the 37 harmonies with enlightenment, it's divided into 7 groups, and mindfulness appears in 5 of those groups. Okay, so it's an important mental factor. Okay. Okay, so then mindfulness also is very often coupled with another mental factor called samprajana, which can be translated. I finally settled on the translation of introspective awareness. Okay, but it's translated as vigilance. In the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, it was mental alertness. It's translated as clear comprehension or clear knowing. So there's many, many different translations for it. Okay, and so this one of introspective awareness and mindfulness, they often appear as a couple, because mindfulness remembers what it is that we're focusing on, and introspective alertness helps us. It's the one, or introspective awareness is the one that is aware of, are we still on that object or not? Yeah, what is our mind doing? Are we, in the domain of what we're supposed to be doing? Okay, so lots of times, well, it's interesting, because when we talk about how mindfulness begins, when we're talking about the 4 establishments of mindfulness, there's a preparatory practice and then there's the actual practice. In the preparatory practice, it's talking about being mindful during our daily activities when we're doing things. But what's actually interesting is in many of the scriptures, the word is introspective awareness, to act with awareness during our daily things. Yeah. So often it uses that word with awareness, but it includes mindfulness in the sense that we're supposed to be remembering what we're doing, as well as evaluating if what we're doing is, what we're trying to remember to do. You getting what I'm saying? So there's some interesting passages to talk about here. So introspective awareness is aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it, or how we should be doing it. Okay? And so when we're talking about daily activities, it's not a technical term. It's more of an adverb. So it's, acting with awareness or acting awarefully. Okay, and this is how many people often speak of acting mindfully, but you can see how the two, really get blended in many ways. Okay, so a person who's acting with awareness is paying attention to his or her actions as well as to the surrounding environment and his or her relationship with that environment. Okay, so we've talked about this in various ways during the course. If you're going to be a monastic, you have to be mindful of your precepts. You have to be mindful of what environment you're putting yourself in. Even if you thought the environment was an okay one, once you're in it, you have to be mindful of what's going on, who you're with, what's happening with those people, how they're treating you, how you're treating them. Whether attachment is arising in your mind or anger is arising in your mind. So all of this kind of awareness of the whole situation. Yeah. So this kind of acting with awareness in our life, it isn't just what am I doing? Okay. It's because we can see what we're doing, but we're always acting in a context. We're always acting in a situation. And so to assess whether, our actions are something beneficial or not, we have to see the context of the situation. So we're not just aware, I'm walking, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but, where am I walking? And how am I walking? And who is around me when I'm walking? And how do I feel about these people who are around? And is there some vibe of anger or attachment around them? Okay? So it's aware also of the setting, of the circumstance. So that gives us the ability to really make some wise decisions instead of acting on mindfulness, acting on automatic. Okay? Because if we just go on automatic, we're just doing things habitually, we're not being aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it's affecting the other people around us. Yeah, we're just going along. Yeah. And often in a very, very self-centered way, Our mind is in the la-la land of me. And what do I want? And how can I arrange the situation so that I get the attention I want, so that I can get people to do what I want them to do? Our minds are so full of those kinds of ideas. I'm doing this, I don't want to get caught doing this because this isn't what I should be doing right now, but I don't feel like doing what I'm doing right now, so how can I stay under the radar? Our mind is like filled with all this kind of stuff, and so we're never present, and we're never making any wise decisions about what we're doing, because we're completely propelled by that self-centered mind. So this is a lot of what we're trying to work with in monastic life, and even if you're not a monastic, just to be a practitioner, just to be a healthy human being, just to get along well with others. Okay, this kind of thing is very, very, very important. Okay, so so a person, acting with awareness is aware of all of those things, and acting with awareness protects us now, so that what we do is something that's going to get us towards our spiritual goal, and in that way it enables us to create a lot of good karma and avoid creating destructive karma. Whereas when we operate on automatic and just let ignorance, anger, and attachment run the show, then we often wind up in situations where we're scratching our head going, why am I here? And what am I doing? Yeah? You ever been in that situation? Why am I saying this? Yeah? Or, I've succeeded in fooling those people, but I still don't feel good about myself. Yeah, so those kind of mental states too. Okay, so a sangha in Shravaka Bhumi, the ground of the hearers, there's a quote from this, and what's interesting is this passage is almost exactly like the passage in the Pali Suttas. Okay, and it's almost very much like a passage in the 25,000 verse Prajnaparamita Sutras too. So I think this is quite important to know, because otherwise we think, oh, this kind of behavior, that's just for those people, who are doing Theravada style practice, and they walk slowly and do everything, but we're too busy benefiting sentient beings. We don't have to do it. And you see, mindfulness is going to help us see whether what we're doing is really benefiting sentient beings or not. Okay. So the quote is, "What is abiding in awareness? Having trained in such a way in staying awake," okay, so when we're awake, we train in awareness, "he now abides with awareness while going and returning, coming and going, okay, while looking ahead and looking to the sides, while extending and bending limbs, okay, while wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, while eating and drinking, chewing and tasting, while standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, waking up, talking, or being silent, and when removing drowsiness and sleepiness." So those are all the situations in which we practice being aware, okay, or which we try to practice or should be practicing, being aware, with mindfulness of what we, should be doing, what we want to be doing in those moments, okay? So we have the 4 physical postures here when we're standing, sitting, lying down, and moving. Okay, to be aware of what our body's doing. Remember the other day I was talking a little bit about body language and body posture, and how we convey a lot of different things by how we stand and sit and walk and lie down, and especially if we're attracted to somebody and we want them to notice us, we walk in a certain way, we move in a certain way, we sit in a certain way. We convey so much information by our body language. But if we're not mindful of how we need to be holding our body, then we very easily slip into habitual ways of holding our body that give certain ideas to different people. And if we're lacking in awareness, we're not even aware that we're doing that. Okay? So same thing with speech. Yeah? How are we talking to somebody? What are we saying? What is our motivation for speaking? Now, when we're laughing, when we're sitting and chatting with people, what is our motivation? Are we even aware of why we're speaking and what it is we're trying to communicate? Or again, are we just acting on automatic of, well, I'm with a lot of people, what to do? We have a good time and we chatter and we laugh. Yeah, that's kind of what people in the world do, isn't it? We're together, we have a good time, we talk about this, laugh, make a lot of noise, chatter, laugh. Doesn't matter what the circumstance is, doesn't matter what the environment is, doesn't matter anything, I'm having a good time. Yeah? Is that the mind of a Dharma practitioner? Yeah? It's going to be hard to benefit sentient beings. It's going to be hard to avoid creating destructive karma ourselves if we don't have that kind of mindfulness that remembers how we want to be talking and the awareness that is aware of exactly how we are talking. Yeah? And, sometimes what we say, we're not aware of the tone of voice we use, and yet we're communicating something by our tone of voice. We can say the exact same words in so many different ways and communicate exactly the opposite things. We can communicate, I'm interested in you. We can communicate, I'm mad at you. We can communicate, I don't care. The same words, but just by the tone of our voice, just by the volume of our voice. Yeah? And so if we're not aware, if we're not careful, we're communicating things that we may or may not feel, or that we may or may not even be aware of. We may communicate anger, and when somebody says, sounds like you're mad at me, we go, why do you think that? We're not at all aware of our tone of voice. Okay? So all these kinds of things of just, sitting down and doing some inventory with ourselves. His Holiness always says, our real laboratory is in here. Yeah, it's an internal laboratory where we do research, where we test things out. So really becoming aware of that. And so that's why, in the monastic community, we remind each other of different things. If somebody's standing in a certain way where they shouldn't be, we remind each other, in a pleasant way. If somebody's, not doing what they should be doing at that time, we check in on them, make sure they're not sick, and if they're not sick, then remind them of, kind of what's happening right now. Okay? So, the community really supports developing that kind of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it's challenging, when you first come to that environment, and as Venerable Simke was saying at lunch today, all of our past habits and notions and conceptions, let alone physical and verbal habits, are now something we have to become aware of, because they may not be appropriate for this situation. Okay? So, so there's awareness when you're going and when you're coming back, so you're aware of where you're going and why you're going. And think of how much fossil fuel and how much pollution we could, how much fossil fuel we save, how much pollution we would prevent if people were aware of where they were going and why they were going there. Just think of it, because how do we operate in our society? I feel restless, I feel bored, what do? I get in the car and I drive somewhere. Yeah? And people are always saying, I'm so busy, but then every day they're stopping at the store to buy something instead of doing their shopping one day a week and organizing it and bringing everything together. They're going to the store every single day and then saying, I have no time. Okay? And then, of course, all the gasoline that's used to go to the store. Each time you go, you buy one thing that you went to buy and a few things that you didn't go to buy, you know, because your attachment manifests once you're at the store. Yeah. But it's true, isn't it, about transportation? When we feel bored, what do? You know, let's go in the car and go somewhere. Go to the mall, take a ride in the countryside, just drive around. And in the process, we pollute the environment. So this kind of thing is, you know, is important. I mean, imagine just making this a practice. When you get behind the driver's, when you get in the driver's seat behind the wheel, to stop and think, where am I going? Why am I going there? Is it really necessary for me to go there now? Is it really necessary? Or could I combine this trip with doing something else in order to save time and to save petrol? Yeah. And thinking, how am I going to go there? Am I just going to drive, you know, with the radio on and my arm out, you know, on the window and cruising along with my one finger, you know, on the driver's wheel? Oh, we all laugh, but how many people here do that, you know? Or are we cruising along with the music blaring and, you know, we're really into the music and, you know? Or we're driving. I drove with somebody once. It was amazing. Always, you know, he passed something that looked interesting. And so, you know, look, and then look back and here. Actually, he was looking this way because he was in the U.S. He was on this side of the car. You know, I'm going, you know, that you need to look that way, not that way. Yeah. But again, why? Lack of mindfulness. You know, not aware of what he needs to be looking at, and just, you know, the mind attracted by some interesting looking object, and so the attention just goes off to it. Okay, so, you know, there's a lot of things for practice in here, isn't there? You know, and I think especially around vehicles and driving. Now, because what I've noticed, that this is an area where people have a lot of resistance. You know, a lot of resistance. You know, there was one person, one monastic, who was coming to stay here, and he had a car, and, you know, he wanted to stay here long term, and I said, monastics don't have their own cars. I think that's when he decided to leave. You know, it was like, my car is me. My car is my independence. Yeah, my car is my way out. Quite amazing. Yeah. And just, you know, also learning to put trips together. We have so much habit of, I want this, or I need it, so I just get in the car and go get it. That's all. Without thinking ahead. You know, what am I going to need tomorrow? What am I going to need the day after tomorrow? So that when I go, I get everything all at one time. And in that way, I don't pollute the environment. Okay? So we talk a lot about not polluting the environment. But when it comes to our being more mindful and only driving when we have to, our care about the environment is out the window. You know, when we want to go somewhere and we want something, we're going. Okay, then the verse in the 25,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra talks about how bodhisattvas practice mindfulness. Okay. So it says, how does a bodhisattva, a great being, dwell watching the body in relation to the inner body? O Subhuti, Subhuti is one of the 8 great bodhisattvas. As the bodhisattva, the great being, walks, he realizes, I am walking. When standing, he realizes, I am standing. When sitting, he realizes, I am sitting. When lying down, he realizes, I am lying down. However his body may be situated, whether in an excellent state or one that is not excellent, he realizes that it is situated in that manner. Okay? So quite aware. And I like, to be really aware when we're walking is actually not so easy because our mind is so often where we're going. Yeah, and so we don't look where we're going, we don't think of how we're walking, how we're opening the door, how we're closing the door, who else is in the environment. These stairs, this stairway here, is our great practice. How often have you almost, or actually have, collided with people on that stairway? Because we want to go up, we want to go down, we want to get where we're going fast, we just charge ahead, and there's somebody else, we're going up charging, somebody else is coming down charging, and we crash in the middle. Yeah? And you're not at all aware of who it is that's going up or down, you're just determined to get where you're going. So even if His Holiness the Dalai Lama were here, you wouldn't care, you would bump into him, walk up the stairs. Yeah, we want to get where we're going. Doesn't matter who else is there. Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah, just this little thing. This is our mindfulness test. Yeah. So there's a few other places that we almost collide. Yeah. And also, just being aware in the meditation hall. You people have been quite good. Your shoes are all lined up. It's very nice. You've been mindful about putting your shoes lined up, except a few people. But, mostly they're quite lined up. It's very nice. Some places you go, the shoes are like just in complete disarray. Yeah? No care at all about how that's done. So, all these small things are, reflections of what is going on in our mind, or rather, what is not going on in our mind. Okay? Furthermore, Subhuti, the Bodhisattva, the great being, maintains awareness when he goes from his residence or returns there. He maintains awareness when looking ahead or looking to the side. He maintains awareness when bending or extending his leg, arm, foot, hand, whatever limb it is. He maintains awareness when carrying his outer robe. His other robes are his alms bowl. He maintains awareness when eating, chewing, drinking, or tasting. That's another area where we're spaced out, isn't it? Yeah, just kind of yeah, eating, talking. Yeah, kind of not being aware of what we're eating, not being aware of, the 5 contemplations that we recite before we eat. Those are meant as things to be aware of while we're eating. Yeah, to really contemplate those while we're eating. He maintains awareness when sleeping or dispelling drowsiness. Usually when dispelling drowsiness, waking up in the morning, we're aware of, I want my tea. He maintains awareness when going, coming, standing, sitting, lying down, waking up, speaking, being silent, or retiring in order to practice meditation. O Subhuti, thus does the Bodhisattva, the great being, one who practices the perfection of wisdom, dwell, watching the body in relation to the inner body. The inner body means one's own body. Okay. Moreover, he does not form deliberative thoughts associated with the body on account of his not apprehending an inherently existent body. He is ardent, vigilant, and possessed of mindfulness, having dispelled all longing for and dejection towards the world. Okay, so staying right with what he's doing, with the awareness of emptiness, you know. Okay, so while doing something, not realizing emptiness directly, but having that awareness of emptiness, and having dispelled any kind of longing for things in samsara, or dejection and sadness about things in samsara. Okay? So the mindfulness is really placed on the nature of phenomena. Okay? That's a very good way to protect the mind from afflictions. Yeah? Okay, so the Buddha recommends that the Bodhisattva practices awareness in those 4 physical positions, and whether they're doing mundane things, putting on their robe, taking it off, washing their bowl or whatever, whether they're doing Dharma activities or not, to maintain mindfulness. Okay, and then Asanga explains the meaning of abiding in awareness. Okay, so here we're having awareness, mindfulness kind of put together again, while going out and returning. Okay, and so going out, coming and going were things that we found in all those passages. So here he says, concerning going, so first he's going to define what going is. Okay, there might be someone who goes to a village, to one village or to the other, or goes to one family or to the other, or to one monastery or the other. Concerning returning, there might be somebody who returns from one village or another, who returns from one family or another, or who returns from one monastery or another. So we might say, you know, what going means, coming and going. Going is there's somebody who is going to their place of work, you know, or coming home from their place of work. They're going to the market, they're coming home from the market. Yeah, they're going to Dharma class, they're coming home from Dharma class. Concerning abiding in awareness. Okay, so here's what abiding in awareness means. While going, he fully knows, I am going. While returning, he fully knows, I am returning. Okay? How often do we know whether we're coming or going? Or are we just driving along and miss the turn? Okay, happened to all of us, hasn't it? Okay? So, knowing what you're doing when you're doing it. He fully knows, here I should go, here I should not go. Okay? So here's where the wisdom is coming in. Yeah, I'm going, but where am I going and why am I going there? And there's certain places, if I'm, you know, a monastic, that I should not go, that I do not go. Okay? And so you're aware of where you should be going, you know, where to go, where not to go. Am I going to a place that, you know, is okay for a monastic to go to, or am I going to a place that's not okay? Am I going with somebody that's it's okay for me to go there with, or am I going with somebody that it's not okay for me to go there with? Okay? So having that kind of awareness. This is the kind of thing my mother wanted me to do when I was 16. You know, I thought she was a little nuts, but actually she was quite wise, you know. Here I should go, here I should not go. Yeah, we need to be aware. Yeah, because if we're arrogant, oh, I'm a monastic, I have no problem with attachment, I'll go here, I'll go there, I'm immune to objects of attachment, I'll be okay, don't worry about me. As soon as you think that, be careful. You know, as soon as we get a little bit puffed up, a little bit complacent and haughty, you know, something comes out of left field and smacks us. Okay? So this, he knows fully, now I should go, now I should not go. So also being aware of the time. When am I going? When am I not going? Okay? Because timing is very important too, isn't it? You can go to visit your friend at one time. You can go to visit your friend at another time. One time's appropriate, one time's not. Okay? So to be aware of what time we're going. To be aware of how we're going there. Yeah? How am I going there? Am I going there quickly? Am I going there slowly? Am I in a good mood when I'm going there? Or am I in a bad mood? Because if I'm going there in a bad mood and I'm not aware of it, you know what's going to happen when I get there? Yeah. If he possesses such awareness while going, he fully knows I am going. He only goes where he should go. He only goes when he should go. And he only goes as he should go. In other words, in that proper manner. That's as he should go, in the right manner. This is what is called abiding in awareness regarding going and returning. Okay? So knowing where, when, how. Yeah? And so especially, with monastics, to be aware of this, if whatever gender you are, you don't go somewhere out in public just alone with somebody of the opposite gender. Yeah? Unless, there might be a few special circumstances. But generally you try and stay in groups. You don't stay standing and talking alone with somebody of the opposite gender. You stay in a public place if you're going to talk to somebody. So there's all these kinds of things that if you're aware of, then it helps you keep your precepts well. Yeah? But if you're not aware, if you don't care about it, if you're reckless, then you can very easily get in a situation where there's some danger. And you're not even aware of the danger because you've lost the conscientiousness. Okay, so the general meaning of acting with awareness is to know what we're doing, when we're doing it, and to know how to do it in an appropriate manner. Okay? So, like I said, when we're driving, when we're going, somebody in the group was very interested in these little slogans that we say in the thought training practice when we're doing different activities. I've been sharing with some of you when you're washing the dishes to think you're cleansing the afflictions from sentient beings' minds, or when you're vacuuming, you're taking up the sufferings of sentient beings, or when you're painting, you're covering everybody with bliss. Yeah. So all these different activities, you can put these are called gathas, that's a little word, gathas, or little slogans. Things that you train your mind to think when you're doing these kind of everyday activities. And so that is kind of a bodhisattva way of being mindful. Okay? Because you're mindful of transforming these daily activities and, filling your mind with something to do with bodhicitta, or something to do with emptiness as you're doing these simple activities. So even walking in the garden, to walk in the garden and make offerings. We don't have to pick the flowers and put them on the altar to make offerings. We can walk through the garden and just make offerings. Okay? You can walk down the aisles and in a store and make offerings. You don't have to buy everything. Okay? So to be aware, to be mindful of these kinds of techniques of transforming ordinary activities into Dharma practice. Okay. So, So in sum, a Sangha said in Compendium of Knowledge, how can one be restrained in one's body and speech? By possessing introspective awareness. Okay? So if we really want to do something with our speech How many of you kind of have been doing a little bit of reflection during this retreat about how you speak? Yeah, you're becoming a little bit more aware of how you speak. Are there some changes you want to make? Yeah? So, this kind of mindfulness and introspective awareness, these are really essential to activate, to make those kind of changes that you want to make in how you speak to people. Yeah? And we all know that how we speak to people influences how they speak back to us. Yeah? So sometimes when we're wondering, why somebody's talking to us in a certain way, we can also wonder, how am I talking to them? Might have, there might be some relationship there. Okay. Then Shantideva, in A Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way, he devotes an entire chapter to cultivating introspective awareness. Okay, so speaking of both mindfulness and introspective awareness together there. And so the chapter is quite beautiful. He has one chapter on conscientiousness, kind of like why it's important to keep good ethical conduct, and then another chapter on introspective alertness, where there's, it's a beautiful chapter because in it, he not only goes through like a lot of practical situations and how a bodhisattva behaves, but also in that chapter is where he goes into the big discussion about how our real enemies are afflictions, and how compares an enemy, a worldly enemy, with the enemy of our afflictions, and which one is a bigger problem for us, and shows all the ways in which the enemy of the afflictions is a much bigger problem than any human being or sentient being ever could be. So it's quite a beautiful chapter, really getting us to focus on the importance of doing something about our wild elephant mind. Mm-hmm. And so mindfulness and introspective alertness are really key to doing that. Okay. Okay, let's see. Here's another one from the hearer's ground. How does one lie in bed with awareness? When the mind of the person is lying down with awareness, is disturbed by one affliction or the other, he knows this disturbance fully. He does not indulge in it. He abandons it. He penetrates it, and he turns away from this thought. Therefore, it is called lying in a bed. It is called lying in bed while abiding in awareness. Okay? So even when we lie down, being aware, what is going through my mind? What do I want, to go through my mind as I'm falling asleep? Yeah? So this kind of mindfulness, remembering what we want to be thinking about when we fall asleep, is also what do we want to be thinking about when we're dying? Yeah? And so remembering that object, bringing it into awareness, focusing on it as we fall asleep or as we're dying. Yeah, very important practice. So we have a couple of minutes for questions. Yeah?
How exactly do you lie in bed with awareness? Like when a disturbing thought comes up, would you say, okay, just go away thought, or do you analyze it and say, all right, this is an affliction, this is the reason that I thought that, and then dispel it?
Yeah. If you have some kind of crazy thought while you're lying down, or even when you're sitting up, you have to first of all notice it and identify it. If you don't do that, then you can't do anything else. And then, there's a number of different ways that you can deal with it. One is to just kind of like, okay, here's this thought. how do I think this thought is going to benefit me? You know? What kind of result is this thought going to bring me? Or looking at that thought and thinking, is this thought in line with reality? Or is it in line with affliction, with self-centered thought, with my make-believe mind? So, questioning those things, being aware. Yeah? And then very often, just by doing that and seeing that the thought's not beneficial, that it's not realistic, often just that alone is enough for us to drop that kind of thought. Because if this thought is not going to do me any good, why am I going to hang around it? Yeah? If a thief comes in your house, are you going to let them stand there? As soon as you recognize they're a thief, and as soon as they know you've recognized them as a thief, they know it's time to go. Yeah. So same thing here. Yeah.
I have a question about the practice of gathas while we're doing offering service or engaged in activity. So with the practice of a gatha, sometimes when I do that practice, I think to myself, well, by doing this gatha, I'm not necessarily aware fully of, say, washing the window. Like I'm standing here with the window and the sensations of it. Instead, I'm doing a gatha. May all defilements be cleansed. Like people have clear insight into emptiness. So I'm wondering, I like the practice a lot, but this has come up a few times. I wonder if I'm distracting myself or being fully present with what's going on.
Okay. So when you're doing the gatha, you're wondering if sometimes you're distracting yourself, thinking about, when you're washing the window, I'm wiping away the defilements of sentient beings. Am I distracting myself from actually paying attention to what I'm doing at that moment?
Just not fully aware and present with what's going on.
Yeah.
The glass, the sun, the sensations in my body.
Yeah. So not fully aware of the glass, the sun, the sensations in your body. Okay. It's fine to be aware of the glass and sun and all these things. You shouldn't be spaced out in your own little universe. However, is just being aware of the glass and the sun something virtuous? No. It's just being aware of the glass and the sun, So if you can still be aware of what you're doing, you have to be aware of the glass and all these kinds of things. But at the same time thinking, I'm cleansing the defilements from sentient beings' minds. And that, what it does is it kind of opens you up to what's going on in this universe at this moment. Because what's going on in this universe isn't just, I'm washing a window. Yeah, what's going on in the universe is there's all these, countless number of sentient beings in cyclic existence. And I care about them and I want to be related to them. And even if I can't do anything directly to help them, I want to feel connected with them and give them my good wishes and my prayers and my good energy. So that's being present, isn't it? Maybe not with the glass and the sun and the feeling of the water that you're washing the windows with, but it's being present with the situation that you're in, living on this planet.
Can I ask another question? Okay. Is that practice, do you think, a little bit related to the practice of having pure view? We can impute meaning of anything.
Yeah.
So why not, like you say, why not impute something that's more virtuous?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because it's not like we're just sitting there being aware of the glass and the sun. It's like, this sun's too bright. Or this sun is so beautiful, I wish my boyfriend were here looking at it with me. Or, kind of our mind so easily goes off with something. Hmm? Mm-hmm.
How does the mental factor mindfulness, specifically when you said that in studying it helps us to remember or to gain Dharma knowledge, or just knowledge in general even, how does that relate to just the general usage of the term memory, just like kind of like a database or store, of information that we can bring up, but that's not, that the mind isn't staying with undistractedly, continuously.
So the question is, how is mindfulness related to memory?
Yeah, and the general usage in English that we...
The general way that we use the English word memory. Yeah. I think when we're learning something, the more we have mindfulness when we're learning it, the easier it will be to remember it afterwards. Okay? Because if we're really focused on learning something in an undistracted way, then it's going to go in completely different than if we're distracted, if we're in la-la land, if we're falling asleep. And so that will influence whether we can remember it later or not. Is that answering your question? Is that what you're looking for?
So now, what is memory in the context of like the mental factors?
Yeah. It's the same one that's often translated as mindfulness. Because when you think what memory is, it's you're calling to mind a familiar object. Okay, so it's a familiar object. You're calling it into your attention and placing your mind on it in such a way that you don't get distracted from it. Yeah, that's when we're remembering something. That's what's happening. There's something from the past that we're calling into mind and staying with, at least for a little bit. Of course, our memory is also kind of notoriously bad because we pick out certain things to remember and we make up things that we thought were going on in the situation that were not going on, but we're positive we remember. Yeah? So I think the more we actually have mindfulness in the present when something's happening, the better we're actually going to be able to remember something instead of all of our, well, I'm really certain somebody said X, Y, Z, and the other person, everybody else is going, Okay, if we're really paying attention there and really listening to the words instead of being stuck in our own thoughts, then our memory might be more accurate too. Okay.